Hi, I'm Cindy Winget, the author of Gothic Horror Mashups, and welcome to my channel. So in today's video, I've decided to do a new release reading vlog. So normally I would only choose 3 to do a vlog because I feel like that's already going to be pretty long. But I'm actually going to be doing 4 because I just couldn't decide. There was too many books that have recently come out that I want to read, and I just really want to read all of them, so I whittled it down to 4. So forgive me if this video ends up being super long. Without further ado, if you've watched my TBR video, you've already seen 2 of these books, and it's kind of what got me wanting to do a new release vlog because I figured 2 of the books on my TBR are already new releases, so why not make a vlog out of it? So the first one I'm going to be talking about is Julie Chan is Dead. So you've probably heard about this book. It's making the rounds. Everybody's talking about this book right now, and it sounds amazing and I'm very excited for it. So when I was doing my TBR, this was like a no-brainer. When I saw it on my shelf, I was like, yes, that one. If you don't know this woman, so this is about these twins that were separated when they were 3 years old because their parents died in a car crash. And so the person that adopted her sister only wanted 1 kid, and so they ended up being separated. But then like years and years later, when they're all grown up now, her sister ends up being a really famous influencer, and she comes and finds her twin sister as part of like a YouTube stunt, I guess. And so she's like, oh, watch me find my long lost sister, you know. And she like bought her a house and everything because she's rich. She got adopted by a rich family, plus she's a rich influencer. And so she does this video finding her sister. And so our main character, she was like, wow, I found my sister, you know. She was pretty excited to start this relationship with her. But after that video, she just up and leaves, never sees her again, never talks to her again. Just, you know, she only wanted to do that one video. She didn't actually care about having a relationship with her twin. And so that obviously is heartbreaking for our main character. So she's devastated, but then 3 years later, her sister ends up calling her out of the blue and sounds like she's in trouble and she needs help. And so our main character hops on a bus and travels to New York City to find out what happened to her sister. And so when she ends up at her apartment, she discovers her twin's dead body. And in all the commotion and the chaos, people mistake her for being her sister. And so she's like, you know what? I have a crappy job. I don't have any money in the bank. My sister was kind of a butthead anyways. And so she decides to pretend to be her dead sister and decides to pretend that she is the one that actually died and takes her sister's place. So that sounds like so much fun, and I'm very excited to read this. And then I also want to do Riley Sager's new book. So I don't have my physical copy of that yet because I'm recording this at the end of May, and so it's not out yet actually. So, but Riley Sager's coming out with a new book called With a Vengeance, and this takes place on a train. It has the same vibes as like Murder on the Orient Express. I don't actually know that much about this. I kind of just want to go in blind, and I know I'm going to love it because I love all of Riley Sager's books. I mean, granted, some of them I love more than others, but, you know, he's an autobiographer for me, so I'm always going to pick up his books. So I don't have that much of a synopsis to give you, I'm sorry, but I don't really know what this is about, other than I think we have our main character who wants revenge on a bunch of people, and so she convinces them to be on this train, but then before she can enact her revenge plot, somebody gets murdered. And so now, instead of doing what she originally wanted to do, she's trying to figure out who murdered this person. Outside of that, that's all I know. That's all I want to know. So I'm very excited for this one. And then we have another one that I'm not really sure if it's horror or if it's a thriller. So maybe it's like a supernatural thriller. But I am talking about We Live Here Now by Sarah Pinborough. So this is like a haunted house story where you don't know if you can trust our unreliable narrator main character, which is very thriller-esque but also very, you know, haunted house-esque. And so she ended up having sepsis, and I guess as part of the treatment for sepsis, whatever medication she's on can give you hallucinations. So she's trying to decide, is my house haunted or am I just hallucinating? And then of course there's always like problems in the marriage and different things, but she believes that somebody was murdered in her house. So she's trying to figure out who done it and if they're still here. So anyways, very excited for this. This copy is gorgeous. It's got these sprayed edges. It's got this tree. You know, it's a pretty pretty thin book. I think I'll fly through this pretty quickly. And then last but not least, we have The Nightbirds by Christopher Golden. And I personally enjoy Christopher Golden's books, All Hallows being my favorite so far. But I love this cover, isn't it so cool? And this is about, I think, an island that's kind of been abandoned and isolated for a really long time, and then people finally go to this island and mysterious things happen. Really all I know about it, that's just, again, like the Riley Sager one, that's kind of all I want to know about it. I just want to discover it for myself, especially because this one's also very thin. It's like less than 300 pages, so I'm just going to go in blind and we'll discover together what this book is about and if it's any good. Okay, so I'm here for my first update. I'm about 60 pages into Julie Chan is Dead, and I am loving this. I'm loving it just as much as I hoped, and so I hope it keeps up that energy. I hope it remains that way for the rest of the book. There's always the fear that you're gonna love the first part and then it's gonna drop off. So hopefully that's not the case, but so far I love it. It's everything that I wanted it to be. And I kind of thought our main character was gonna be unlikable, kind of in the same way as Silent Night by R.L. Stine, if you've read that book. You know, our main character is very unlikable, but not in a way that turns me off, but in a way that's actually entertaining and fun. And I don't know why I thought that. I don't know if I heard somebody give a review that said she was unlikable, but I don't know. So for some reason I had that impression. But so far, she's not an unlikable character. I actually do like our main character, and I do relate to her, and I do like her. And yeah, it's very, very fun. Pretty much the synopsis that I gave you earlier, that's all I've read. I haven't read anything past that point of her, you know, finding her murdered sister and taking her place. That's pretty much all that's happened so far. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I really am liking it a lot. It's a quick, easy read. And unfortunately, that's really all I have to say about it right now. But I'll probably update again when I'm about halfway. So I just got back from Timpanogos Cave, and it was very, very enjoyable, but also very, very hard. So we were a half hour late, which sucked because there was a car accident, and so traffic on the highway was just pretty much stopped for a bit. And they give you like a certain amount of time to reach the top so that you could be with the tour guide that you signed up for. And so when we got there and we were half hour late, that meant we had to like hustle to the top. And so we couldn't really take a whole lot of breaks, which sucked because, like I was saying before, it's a hard hike because it's just like up, 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 up. So we had to try and hurry, and I'm not as in shape as I used to be, and this is my first hike of the summer. So yeah, I was struggling, especially because, you know, you've reached a higher elevation in such a quick amount of time that it's just hard to breathe, you know. And so my husband had to hold my hand and literally like pull me up the mountain or push me up the mountain, and we just hustled as fast as we could to the top. And then we get there and we still had to wait. Like we got there within like 5 minutes that we needed to be there, but then we still ended up sitting around for like 20 minutes, go figure. And the kids wanted to eat their snacks, and Devin's like, no, 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 they're gonna come any minute, you know, and so they were complaining about that, and they would have had plenty of time had we just let them. And I finally let them have a granola bar, and of course, as soon as I hand them the granola bar, well, I'd given them some apple slices before that, but as soon as I gave them the granola bar, it was like, oh, it's time to go, of course. But the cave was amazing. It's everything that I remembered. It was really, really fun, really, really enjoyable. I'll share some footage with you, but I'm here for another update though, so let's talk about the book. So I've made it just over halfway and Julie Chan is dead, and I'm still really, really enjoying it. I think this is a really fun, very fast-paced book. It's not fast-paced in the sense that like a lot is going on. It's fast-paced in the sense that it's just an easy read, and so it's easy to just fly through. So our main character, I can kind of understand now why people think she might be unlikable. I personally still don't think she's unlikable necessarily, but she is getting caught up in the whole influencer being rich type world, you know, and so she's kind of starting to fall into those tropes of people with privilege and all of that. But it's part of her story arc, and it's understandable that she would feel this way, especially coming from her background where she didn't grow up with a lot of money, and her aunt treats her terribly and always cuts down her self-esteem, and so she's starting to realize that, oh, on the internet, I can have friends on the internet. People love me, you know, and they validate me and they make me feel good. And so she kind of is chasing that dopamine, you know, that you get from strangers liking you on the internet. And, you know, she's getting all this free stuff and all this attention, and she has money now, and so she's just falling into that world. And there's one woman called Bella Marie, and she's like the head influencer. Everybody wants to be her. Everybody wants to be friends with her. She helps lower people come into her orbit, and then all of a sudden their follower count skyrockets, you know, and she helps them find their brand and whatever. So she's like a huge deal, and our main character has fallen into her orbit and is part of what they call the Belladonnas, which is this special elite group of influencers. And so this Bella Marie, every year she takes these women on a trip where they're supposed to be away from technology, away from their phones, away from social media for a week, and just kind of unplug and unwind. But I think this is where the thriller aspects of the story are going to come into play, because she seems very suspicious to me. But I'm still waiting for our main character to figure out what happened to her twin. As of right now, she's not thinking anything nefarious or anything. She's just thinking, oh, my twin died of an overdose, you know? And maybe she did, but, you know, I know there's more to the story, you know? And so I'm waiting for that part of the story to catch up to where our main character is going to start now trying to figure out, you know, the backstory to the twin that died and this suspicious new person that's been introduced. So I think this latter half is going to be a little bit more thrillery than the rest of the story has been. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I'm flying through it. I think it's really fun. So I have now finished Julie Chan is Dead, and I thought this was going to be a 5-star read. New favorite book. I was loving it so much in the first half, and then pretty much right after I updated you guys, the pacing slowed way down and I was starting to get a little bit bored, just a little bit, not like a ton. And I was like, okay, like I'm ready for the reveal or the twist. I want to know what's going on type thing. And then when the reveal came, I don't know how I feel about it. A part of me likes it and thinks it was good, and another part of me is like, I don't know if I love that. I don't know if I like the direction that this book took. In some ways, I think it was good. There are aspects of the latter half of this book that I did really enjoy, but when I keep reflecting back on it, I still don't know whether I actually loved the ending or not. So I can't give it 5 stars, but I would still give it 4 stars. And I will also say that if you're like me, I don't like hearing the F word over and over and over again. And in the latter half, it says it a lot. You know, a few times, I'm not going to worry about it too much, but when it starts being like super, super repetitive, I'm like, okay, pick another word. But anyway, so just be aware of that if you just happen to not like that. So I would still recommend this book, even though it didn't end up being a 5-star. I do think it was fun. So the next book I'm going to pick up is We Live Here Now. I've actually already started it. I'm about 50 pages in. I can't remember if I gave a synopsis for all the books or not, but this is about a woman who goes to this new house in the country to get away from the city because she had been hospitalized for the last few months because she had fallen off a cliff and broken her leg and possibly some other bones. It was kind of vague when they described the accident, but she got injured, but that injury led to sepsis, and so she almost died. Well, she did die, I guess, at one point, and then was brought back. And then, she's terrified now of getting sepsis again. So anytime she gets a cut or anything, she freaks out that it's going to get infected. But her and her husband figured that they could use a fresh start after that traumatic event, and so they travel to this house in the country. But soon after they move in, she starts to suspect that the house is haunted, and that's really all that's happened so far. But so far so good. I am enjoying it. I will update you soon, and we'll hope it sticks with the atmosphere and sticks with the good vibes that I want from this book. I don't know if this is a thriller or a horror book. I think it's supposed to be a thriller, so it could be like a supernatural thriller. But anyways, I will let you know when I have more thoughts. So I've made it about halfway and We Live Here Now, and I'm really liking it so far. I really like haunted house stories, so this is right up my alley. We also have a perspective of a raven, which I thought was pretty interesting. Like in the prologue, I thought it was just to set the mood and make it kind of creepy and gothic, but when we got more and more perspectives of this raven, I'm like, okay, is this supposed to be like a allegory for like the couple in this story or something? Because this raven, at the very beginning, the male raven flies up out of the chimney and he leaves his mate in the chimney and she ends up dying. And now he feels really, really guilty about it, and he tries to feed her dead mice and curl up next to her even though he knows she's dead. So I'm like, well, that's interesting. Is that supposed to be paralleled in our couple? Because, you know, she also fell and got hurt. She didn't die. Well, she did for a few minutes. And so maybe it's supposed to be like a parallel to the couple, which I thought was interesting. And then as I read more perspectives from this Raven, and they had this book club that she was a part of, and they're actually reading Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven at the book club. So I'm like, okay, so like a little bit of a tidbit of Edgar Allan Poe in there, which I really enjoy because, you know, in my own book, Follow the House of Crane, you know, I also do a mashup of Edgar Allan Poe with a haunted house story because it's The Haunting of Hill House mashed up with Edgar Allan Poe. So that was right up my alley, you know, obviously. So I really enjoyed that. And then I also think because she did die for those few minutes, I think that's why she's seeing all this phenomenon and her husband is not seeing any of it, and he just thinks it's part of her sepsis, that, you know, the doctor said that she might hallucinate a little bit or different things, and so he thinks it's medical, and she's like, no, our house is haunted. And then right up front within the first few chapters, it does allude to the fact that both of the people in this marriage have secrets that they're keeping from the other person, so I'm excited to figure that out. So I'm actually headed up to my parents' cabin for the weekend up in Causey, and so I'll be gone for a few days, but I'm hoping to finish this while I'm up there, and then when I get back I can let you know my final thoughts.
Sometimes like all you want to do is run. Hear me out, hear me out. It's all the things you never show. There are the things I want to know. Secrets start in your heart so slow. But if you
Guess we won't have a fire anymore. We don't want to burn down the forest. It's too close to the fallen tree. Big old ant mound. I know, and then they keep wandering everywhere. Let's see if I can see the ants. I want to get all these ugly little things. This one's got actual worms on it. Hello, so I'm back from my trip to the cabin and I did manage to finish my book there, but it was difficult because it's like every time I sat down to read, either my kids wanted my attention and watch me or talking to me or whatever else. My uncle ended up showing up and none of us knew he was going to be there, but my dad invited him up, which is fine, but I haven't really seen my uncle very often. I think in the last 20 years I've seen him maybe a handful of times. And so I don't really know him that well. And so my parents kept being busy doing different things. And so I ended up in rooms with him like constantly where he would try to make small talk with me. And I was just like, I just want to read, can't you see I have a book? I'm trying to read, but he just insisted on trying to talk to me, which I know probably sounds rude on my part, but I'm very much an introvert. And like I said, I really wanted to be able to read up there because that's what is relaxing for me when I'm on vacation, but I don't know, and it was just awkward. And then my dad, he's like the go guy, that he always wants to be busy. He hates sitting down, like trying to get him to sit down to watch a movie with the family is like pulling teeth. Like he just doesn't like to relax. He just likes to go. And so anytime he sees me reading, he's always just like, you should put the book away, go do something else. Or my mom is always like, put your book away and talk to us. Then you put the book away to talk and you end up just kind of sitting there, or like they're talking to each other but they're not actually directly talking to you. But then if you pull your book back out, then you look like a social pariah. So I don't know. It was difficult to read up there is all I'm trying to say. But luckily when everybody went to bed, I went to bed early, and just sat in my room and read in bed for a while. So I did manage to finish We Live Here Now. And it did have a couple more references to Edgar Allan Poe. So we had some references to Murder at the Rue Morgue. And then there was a character, not like a direct character, but they talked about somebody that had the last name Usher. So, I liked the little nods to Edgar Allan Poe. I thought they were fun. And then I liked having the dual point of view, because the story is being told by the wife and the husband's point of view. And so I really liked seeing both sides of the story. I thought it a more well-rounded story that way. It kind of reminded me of What Lies Beneath a little bit, just because there is tension in the marriage and, something terrible is going to happen by the end. But luckily, I didn't actually predict the ending, because it was written in such a way that it could go like several different directions. And you're like, okay, which direction are we going to go? And you're like, oh, I think she's going to take it this way. Oh, well, maybe she's going to take it this direction. Well, maybe she's going to do this. And so I couldn't predict the ending because there were several ways set up that this could have gone. And so I was just waiting to see which direction the author took it. And I was very pleased with the ending. I thought it was a really good ending, and I thought it stuck the landing for me personally. So yay, that's always good. I hate it when you're enjoying a story, but then the end just drops the ball. Luckily, in this case, that wasn't the case. There was a brief sex scene in this book, so just be aware of that. But it was pretty brief, and it didn't really bother me too much because it actually had something to do with the plot. Like, it was actually pivotal to the story, so I don't like it when it's just thrown in there just to be in there. But this one actually served a purpose. But I just wanted you to be aware that it is in there in case you're someone that doesn't like that. And then, just like Julie Chan is dead, the latter half of this book did say the F word quite a few times. But this is a UK author, and they tend to use the F word a lot more than Americans. But just be aware of that. I don't know if I'm just extra sensitive to it right now, or if I just happened to read 2 books back to back that had a lot of the F word. I don't know. But again, just be aware of that going in if that's something you're sensitive to. But anyways, I thought this was a really well-written book. I thought it was really fun, and this is a 5-star read for me. So I thought about giving it 4.5 because there's like a few little things that I'm like, maybe. But then I got thinking about it, and I'm like, you know what? Why am I being so stingy about giving things 5 stars? It should just be how much I enjoyed it. And when I wasn't reading this book, I was thinking about this book, and I was wanting to get back to it, and I just wanted to keep reading and keep reading. And to me, that's the mark of a 5-star book, is how much I want to get back to it. So I'm like, nah, I'm not going to give it 4.5. This is a 5-star. So highly recommend this one. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. So the next book I'm going to pick up is The Nightbirds by Christopher Golden. And this is a witch story. And it takes place on this ship that's like a sunken ship that sunk in like the early 1900s. And while it's just been sitting out there in the ocean, it's got these trees, these mangroves that have taken root on this ship. And so now they call it like a floating forest, because the top of this ship has a whole bunch of trees growing on it. Anyway, so we have this guy and his co-workers that have been staying on this ship in order to do research about these trees and about the ecosystem that's there now. And he would like to turn it into a museum one day so that people can come look at it. His co-workers, they stay at like hotels in town, or they rented out an apartment for the month, but he was the crazy one and decided he's just going to stay on this ship because he's like, I'm not going to pay for a hotel, but I could just stay on there. And he likes it. He likes being in the nature. He likes the isolation. He likes having that extra time to himself instead of like commuting back and forth. And so then we have this woman who was his ex-girlfriend, but she ends up asking for his help because there was this woman that showed up at her door with a baby in her arms, claiming that it's her nephew and that they're in danger. And so this woman, she didn't know where else to go or where to turn to. And so she turned to her old ex-boyfriend who was staying on the ship, and she thinks, staying on the ship is isolated enough that maybe the people trying to track them down won't find them. I did read the first few chapters, and that's pretty well all that's taken place. So I will let you know when I get a little bit further in. Probably like the other ones, I'll probably update you about halfway, and hopefully by then we'll have gotten to the witchy stuff, and so I can comment on that. So I'm back with another update because I have finished the Nightbirds. So I was going to update this when I hit the halfway point, but when I got to that point, I didn't really have a whole ton to say about it, so I decided just to wait until I finished it to tell you my thoughts. So this is a witchy book, which I think I already told you, but this is like old school witches, like ancient evil witches, not, what they are in Hollywood today. So I always enjoy that. Same with vampires. I always like it when they're actually evil, and instead of like Twilight vampires. But anyway, so I did enjoy that. It was that type of witchy book. And this is very cinematic. So it's definitely like watching a movie rather than reading a book. Very, very fast paced, action, action, action. It never really let up from the very beginning to the end. It was just, you just hang on tight and you're along for the ride. So I do feel like this was more dark fantasy than horror, if I'm being honest. It's kind of like his Road of Bones book, where it has kind of horror elements, but it kind of leans more towards dark fantasy, especially this one, even more so than Road of Bones. And there's this great big storm that is part of this witchcraft, that is, part of a spell that these witches put on. And it was a very strong description of this storm. Like, you could just feel the water and the wind and the rain throughout the entire book. The storm was very, very prominent and very descriptive, and I really enjoyed that. I thought it was very well done. But when it comes to the descriptions, I feel like Christopher Golden kind of dropped the ball a few times, because I know some people say that they can't visualize things in their head when they're reading, and I'm definitely the opposite of that. I always feel like I'm watching a movie if I can get sucked into it, and then I'm no longer seeing the words. I'm just like watching it in my head. But there was a couple of times where he didn't tell you certain things, and so I couldn't visualize it because I'm like, you need to give me more information. Like, for instance, this woman is being cut as part of some ritual, but he didn't say where she was being cut. And so at first, the other woman had grabbed her wrist, and so I just assumed it was her wrist because it didn't say. But then all of a sudden, it was talking about blood on her chest. I'm like, oh, she's cutting her chest. But he didn't tell you. He just said he started cutting her. But I'm like, where is she cutting her? Or like somebody would have a description that made it sound like they fell off of a bridge into the water. But then all of a sudden they didn't. They were back on the dock. So it just was a little bit confusing. There was just a few different things like that where he didn't quite nail the description and tell me all the information I needed, or it was a little bit confusing. But I mean, it's not a huge deal, but it is there. So the first 2/3 of this book I really enjoyed. I thought it was really fun. I thought it was really interesting. I really liked the characters and the plot. But the last 100 pages, I kind of got bored because, I don't know, as a teenager, I love action films, and I could watch them all the time. But as an adult, it's like if the fight scenes go on too long, I get kind of bored. I'm like, okay, you're fighting the bad guys. We get it. Move on, And that's kind of how I felt about this book. So if you love action movies, then you're going to love this book. It's very, very cinematic, like I was saying. But if you're like me and you start to get a little bit bored, I just feel like it went on a little too long. And I also think that the dialogue was very, very repetitive. There was a certain character that shows up on the scene, and then ever since she shows up, it's like the same conversation over and over and over and over, just very repetitive dialogue. And I'm like, okay, we get it, you know? So the last 100 pages was a little bit of a struggle. Like, I didn't hate it, but I was kind of, okay, yeah, they're fighting, but it's like pages upon pages upon pages, just forever, just this big fight, which again might really work for some people. I bet people would really enjoy that. I just happen to be someone that doesn't necessarily care for that. I'm just not really an action person anymore. And like I said, all the dialogue during those scenes was just very repetitive. So I enjoyed this book, but I don't think it's gonna even be a 4-star. I would probably give it more of a 3.5. So I would still recommend this, but it's not a new favorite of mine. So the last book I'm going to read for this vlog is With a Vengeance by Riley Sager, but I do not have my copy yet. It's only June 7th, and that book doesn't come out until June 10th. So I'm going to have to wait a few days before I can start reading that one for this vlog. I think I already gave you a description of it, but if not, you will definitely be seeing it in the next update.
Never really know what's going on. Look at me sometimes like all you want to do is run. Hear me out, hear me out. It's all the things you never show. There are
So I just got back from the bookstore where I picked up Riley Sager's new book, With a Vengeance. So I'm super excited for this one. I love Riley Sager. He's definitely an author for me. So unfortunately there was an extra sticker on here and it was extra sticky. I hate that. When are booksellers gonna stop putting stickers on their books? But anyways, so if you don't know, this is about a woman who travels on a train with people that she believes have ruined her life, and she's seeking vengeance. And so she wants them to confess to their crimes. But one of them ends up dead, and she didn't foresee that, and she wasn't anticipating anybody dying. As much as she hates these people, she doesn't want them dead. And so now she's in a position of trying to figure out who's the killer on this train. So it definitely has Murder on the Orient Express vibes by Agatha Christie. And this is a little bit of a deviation for Riley Sager because it's a historical fiction set in the 1950s. So that will be interesting. So the kids have been shipped off to the grandparents. So I have a few hours to myself, and I'm planning on using most of it to read this book. I will update you when I get a little bit in and I have some thoughts. So it's time to pick up the children, so my time has ended for reading this book for today. So I've made it about 78 pages into With a Vengeance, which is chapter 10. So not as far as I was hoping, but at least it's something. But it's like with the drive time to pick the kids up and take them, it's like a half hour there and back. Plus, you know, I had to stop to eat lunch, and so I didn't read as much as I thought I was going to. I just didn't have the time that I thought I would have. And then not only that, but I kept falling asleep. Not because I didn't enjoy the book, not because the book is slow or anything. Well, I mean, it is kind of slow, but I wasn't bored reading it. That's not why. I guess I didn't sleep well last night, or maybe just having some peace and quiet finally just, you know, all the tension drains out and you want to sleep. I don't know. But I just cannot stay awake. Like every couple of chapters, I just need to close my eyes for a minute, which is annoying. But forgive me if you can hear that airplane flying above my head. But so this one is set up just like you would expect by something that's like an Agatha Christie novel, because a lot of her books start out the same way, where you have a bunch of characters and you're just kind of being introduced to them. So we have 6 characters, well, 7 including Anna, who is the person who had these people come on to the train that she's going to make confess to their sins. So there's 7 people, and so each chapter has pretty much just been getting to know each of these characters. And then Anna waltzes into the dining car where they are, and she has like a whole speech prepared, about how they did her family wrong, and as a result of their sins, her mother and father and brother all lost their lives. But there is one wrinkle, one little hiccup that happened that was not foreseen, and that's because one of the characters, his dad, was actually supposed to be there. But the son found the invitation on his dad's desk and decided to go in his father's place. And so she's understandably upset by this, because apparently his father is the one she hates the most, and that started this whole thing. And so she really expected and wanted him to be there, not his son. And it sounds like her and the son have some history where they were like an item, but then he broke her heart, and so she doesn't like him, but she's like, it's not the same though as what these other people did to my family, but she doesn't want him there. Every one of these people received an invitation from Anna, and on the back of the invitation she's written one line that is blackmailing them to get them on this train. And what I like is, I thought being on this train was just to isolate them, and so they can't get away, because you can't just step off a moving train. But it actually has a lot to do with trains, as far as the things that they did in the past that were bad actually has to do with trains. And so it does have some relevance, and so I thought that was really interesting. Yeah, so I'm not too far in, not a ton of things has happened, but the writing's good. I enjoy the setup. I'm not bored. I mean, it is kind of slow, but this is more of a murder mystery rather than a thriller, and so I kind of expected that. So far so good. I'm enjoying my time with it. So I'm gonna go pick up the kids and hopefully read again tonight after I put them to bed. And tomorrow I'm gonna take them to the Ogden Nature Center, but hopefully I'll still get some reading done later on in the afternoon, and then again at night after they go to bed once more. So hopefully in the next couple days I'll make it to the halfway point, and I'll have more to update you guys with. I am halfway through With a Vengeance, and I forgot to say this at the beginning, but I love how the spine looks like a ticket. I think that's pretty cool. But anyways, this book is broken up into different sections. Basically, it's a countdown. So like you'll open it and it'll say like 11 p.m., 9 hours to Chicago. You know, and so it's counting down the hours until they get to Chicago. I think you should temper your expectations for this book if you're expecting a fast-paced thriller like most of his other books, because this is definitely a murder mystery, not a thriller. So just go into it with the right expectations, knowing that it's going to be a little bit slower and it's going to have the same tropes as a murder mystery, not as a thriller. So Riley Sager makes you think a little ways in that, you know, he already tells you who the murderer is a couple times, but in true Riley Sager fashion, you know you can't believe it. You know, he's always got tricks up his sleeves. And we've already had one reveal, or twist if you want to call it that, but I saw it a mile away. So I think it will be somewhat easy for most people to guess, in my opinion. But so far, I am still liking this book. I really am. It's not a thriller, but I still like it for what it is. So I don't really have anything else to say about it. So when I finish the book, I'll come back for my final thoughts. Hello everybody, I'm here for my final update of With a Vengeance by Riley Sager. So I just finished this book about 10 minutes ago, so I wanted to give this review while it was still fresh in my mind. This has a very different vibe, very different feeling to it than all of Riley Sager's other novels. This is clearly a different genre for him. This is more of a murder mystery, which I've already stated in my last update, but I really enjoyed that part of it. I thought it was really fun and fresh, and he did lean into a lot of the tropes, so it was pretty trope heavy, and some of it was predictable because of that. There was one thing that happens in particular which I thought was pretty unbelievable. If you've read All the People on This Train Are Suspects or something, I butchered that title, I know I did. But the new Benjamin Stevenson, I think. Everybody on this train is a suspect. That's what it's called. So there was an unbelievable part in that book. And if you've read that book, then you know what I'm talking about when it comes to this, because it's similar. And I'm kind of just like, I think not. Especially in a dress. But anyways, outside of that, I really did enjoy this one. I thought it was a lot of fun. But in true Riley Sager fashion, he likes to hit you with a lot of twists at the end, and sometimes that really works and other times it doesn't, and I feel like in this case it didn't really work for me. It almost made me roll my eyes because it just made it feel a little bit cheesy, like you're watching an old movie where it's like, he was the murderer, or was he? And then he was dead, or was he? You know, like, I don't know, he just likes to hit you across the face multiple times, like bam, 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 chapter to chapter on what actually happened, which I didn't love, I'll admit. I didn't love that. Like I said, most of it was pretty predictable, even though he does hit you with a lot of twists. There was really only one thing that happened at the very end that did surprise me, but pretty much everything else you could kind of guess. But I did like it. It was well written, and I really enjoyed Anna as a character, and I really liked Samus as a character, and even Dante. There was a little bit of a romance between her and Dante, which was fun. So overall, I did enjoy this one, but it's definitely not a favorite of mine. I'd probably put this on par with Survive the Night, which I know a lot of people hated, but I personally thought it was fun, so I did like Survive the Night, but I would put it on par with this book. So I am giving this 3.5 stars. So that's going to be the end of this vlog. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up to let me know. Please subscribe to my channel if you feel so inclined. I post every Friday, and I hope to see you in the next one. See ya.